Hey, you're joining us for a deep dive into, well, a really urgent and incredibly complex international story today. It's about the case of Nimisha Priya, an Indian nurse who is actually facing execution in Yemen.
Yeah.
Our mission here, like always, is to kind of pull out the most important pieces from all the information you've gathered for us. You know, news reports, firsthand accounts from her family, people on the ground.
Right, the social workers, yeah.
Exactly. We want to help you understand not just the basic facts, but the layers here, the context, and what's really truly at stake. Because there's a critical deadline coming up fast.
And that deadline, it just snaps everything into sharp focus, doesn't it? We're talking about Nimisha Priya, an Indian woman. She's in her late 30s, originally from Kerala.
Okay.
And she is scheduled to be executed July 16th, 2025. That's the date set. In Yemen.
July 16th. Wow. And where exactly is she being held?
She's imprisoned in Sana'a, that's the capital city,
Yeah.
but it's currently controlled by Houthi rebels. You know, the armed movement that governs a large part of northern Yemen right now.
Yeah. Right, the Houthis. So this isn't just a standard legal case within a recognized state system.
Not at all. It really highlights how things like, well, personal freedom, due process, they become completely dependent on who's actually in charge, whether it's a state or a non-state group like the Houthis. It fundamentally changes what justice even looks like in a place torn apart by war.
That definitely puts a heavy perspective on it. So, okay, take us back. What exactly happened? What led to this conviction, this death sentence?
Well, Nimisha Priya was convicted of murdering a Yemeni national, a man named Talal Abdo Mehdi. This happened back in 2017.
Okay.
And the court findings, they lay out a pretty disturbing sequence. Apparently she sedated Talal. The idea, or the alleged attempt, was to get her passport back, which he had apparently taken from her.
He was withholding it.
That's the claim, yeah. But the sedation, the dosage, tragically, it turned out to be fatal.
And looking at the sources, the story gets even more disturbing after his death, doesn't it?
It does, unfortunately. After Talal died, the court findings state that Nimisha and a Yemeni colleague she worked with, a woman named Hanan, they dismembered Talal's body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then disposed of it in a water tank.
Okay, so that's the crime she was convicted of. What about the legal process itself? How did that unfold?
It seems to have moved pretty relentlessly since then. The trial court in Sana'a found her guilty, handed down the death sentence back in 2018.
That wasn't the end of it, legally speaking.
No, it went higher. Yemen's Supreme Judicial Council upheld that decision in November 2023.
Okay, so upheld, and then the final approval, that came from the top authority in the Houthi-controlled area.
That's right. The death sentence was approved. Reports widely name Mahdi al-Mashat, who's the president of the Houthi Supreme Political Council. That approval apparently came through last year, or possibly earlier this year.
Right, it highlights that whole complex situation with competing leadership claims in Yemen.
Exactly. And the execution order, has been with the prosecutor since January of this year, 2025. And just to be clear, reports emphasize the whole case has been handled pretty much entirely by the Houthi militia since they control Sana'a.
So the judicial process, such as it is, happened under their authority.
Precisely, which is a critical point. But, you know, to really get the full picture of Nimisha's situation, we need to rewind a bit. Go back to her backstory.
Okay.
I mean, imagine this. She's just 19 years old, moves halfway across the world to Yemen back in 2008. Why? To support her parents back in India, who were struggling, working as daily wage laborers.
Just 19. That's incredibly young to make such a big move.
It really is. She did later marry, even move back to India for a bit with her husband. But, you know, financial problems just kept piling up. It forced her husband and their young daughter to return to India in 2014 while she stayed in Yemen.
Okay, so she's there alone, trying to support the family back home, and that's when the clinic idea came about.
Exactly. This was around 2015. She wanted to escape low-paying hospital jobs, maybe get ahead a bit. So she decided to open her own clinic.
Makes sense.
But Yemeni law, well, it requires a local partner for a foreigner to start a business like that. So she partnered with Talal Abdo Mehdi, the man she was later convicted of murdering. He was a local store owner.
Ah, okay. So that's the connection. Was it always a bad partnership?
Apparently not at first. Sources say they were on good terms initially. He even traveled with her to India for her daughter's baptism. But her family insists that after the civil war really broke out in Yemen, around 2014, Talal's attitude completely changed.
Changed how? This gets into the alleged abuse, right?
Yeah, this is a crucial part of her defense, or at least the narrative from her family. They claim she faced serious abuse from him, mental, physical, financial. They allege he took all her earnings, confiscated her passport.
The passport she tried to get back.
Exactly. They even claim he threatened her with a gun at one point. It paints a picture of, well, coercion and fear.
And this was happening around the time the conflict was escalating. The Indian government was evacuating citizens then, weren't they?
They were. Around 2014, there were evacuation efforts, but Nimisha chose to stay.
Why stay in that situation? Especially if things were getting dangerous with the war and allegedly with Talal.
The reason given is the huge loans she'd taken out to set up that clinic. She felt trapped by debt, trapped by the circumstances, and allegedly trapped by Talal.
Wow. It sounds like a situation of just utter desperation. So fast forward to now. The death sentence is approved. Is there any way out, any hope left?
Well, according to the sources, under the Islamic judicial system, the Sharia law that's applied in Yemen, there is technically one path left to stop the execution.
Okay.
It involves securing a pardon directly from the victim's family, Talal Abdo Mehdi's family.
A pardon from the family.
Yeah.
And that often involves money.
Yes, often. It can involve paying what's known as diya, which is sometimes translated as blood money. It's a form of compensation recognized under Sharia law that can, in some cases, lead to a pardon in murder cases.
Right, Daya. So are negotiations happening? Is someone trying to reach out to Talal's family?
Absolutely. This is where the current efforts are intensely focused. There's a social worker, Samuel Jerome Baskarin, sometimes just referred to as Samuel Jerome. He's got deep roots in Yemen, worked there for over 24 years.
Okay.
And crucially, he holds the power of attorney for Nimisha's mother. He's the main negotiator.
And is he making progress?
He's reportedly heading back to Yemen, like right now, today, to try and resume these incredibly sensitive talks. There was an offer of blood money made previously during a meeting with Talal's family, but apparently they haven't responded yet. It's very delicate.
I can only imagine. And there have been efforts to raise this money, right? I remember reading about an action council.
Yes, the Save Nimisha Priya International Action Council. It's a group, politicians, business people, activists, expats. They came together and actually crowdfunded $40,000 US.
40,000? That sounds significant.
It is. It was intended for the victim's family, given in two parts, two tranches. But some sources suggest there was a delay in sending that second tranche, and that might have complicated or stalled the negotiations at a crucial point.
So timing is critical. And wasn't there also some issue around legal fees complicating things?
Yeah, another layer of difficulty. An Indian embassy-appointed lawyer, Abdullah Amir, reportedly asked for a $20,000 fee up front just to start negotiations, with a total fee of $40,000 being mentioned.
$40,000 just for the lawyer, on top of the potential blood money.
That was the reported demand. Now, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, the MEA, they did provide nearly $20,000, about $19,871 to this lawyer last July.
Okay.
But then issues apparently came up about transparency, making sure the donors who crowdfunded knew exactly how their money was being used, especially regarding these legal fees versus potential blood money. It just adds another hurdle.
It sounds incredibly complex, navigating the legal side, the cultural side with the pardon, and the financial side. And meanwhile, her family must be just desperate. Absolutely desperate. You really feel that when you read about her mother, Prema Kumari. She's a domestic worker back in Kochi, India.
Right.
She has been living in Sana for the past year. Camping out, essentially, staying with Samuel, the social worker.
She's in Yemen now. How did she even get there with the travel restrictions?
She had to get special permission from a court back in India to travel to the Houthi-controlled region. She's managed to see Nimisha twice in prison since she arrived.
Wow. For a whole year, what dedication.
And the cost. She sold her house, sold her home to fund the fight to save her daughter.
She sold her house. That hits hard. It really underscores the human tragedy behind the headlines. What about Nimisha's husband and daughter?
They're still back in India. Her husband, Tony Thomas, he drives a tuk-tuk. And their daughter is now 13 years old.
13.
Yeah. And one source painted such a poignant picture, saying the daughter has, quote, never experienced a mother's love in a normal way. They speak on the phone weekly, apparently.
Weekly calls. Yes, and the daughter gets really upset if she misses one of those calls from her mom in prison. Just heartbreaking, thinking about that family separation on top of everything else.
It really puts a face on the stakes involved. You hear about the mother selling her house, the daughter waiting for calls. It makes the diplomatic and legal efforts feel even more urgent.
It absolutely does. It highlights the immense personal cost. And on the official side, The Indian government, the Ministry of External Affairs, they state they are following it very closely.
What are they saying they're doing?
They confirm they're in regular contact with the local authorities. They're presumably the Houthi authorities in Sana'a and also with Nimisha's family. They say they've rendered all possible assistance and emphasize, the official line. They continue to closely follow the matter.
Which sounds like standard diplomatic language, but what does it mean in practice in a place like Yemen, controlled by rebels?
Well, it probably means keeping channels open, offering
Yeah.
consular support where possible, maybe facilitating things like the mother's visit, providing some funds for legal aid, as we saw. But ultimately, it also shows the limits of diplomatic power in these really complex, volatile situations where local laws, local power structures, and cultural norms like the Daya system are the deciding factors.
Right. Diplomatic leverage might be quite limited.
Especially when dealing with non-state actors in conflict zone.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up for you, the listener. You've now got, hopefully, a much clearer picture of Nimisha Priya's harrowing situation. We've gone from the crime itself, which seems rooted in alleged abuse and, well, financial desperation,
Yeah, and the difficult circumstances she was in.
all the way through the complex legal process under Houthi control in Sana'a, and now these incredibly tense, ongoing negotiations for a pardon, hinging on this concept of blood money, or daya.
And the clock is ticking towards that July 16th deadline.
Right. This case, it really lays bare the huge human stakes involved in these international legal entanglements, these diplomatic efforts. You see the incredible resilience of a family just fighting against enormous odds.
Selling homes, spending a year in a conflict zone.
Yeah. It really makes you think, doesn't it? When you have these situations where completely different legal systems, different cultural norms like the Daya pardon, and these fractured political realities all crash together so dramatically, what does justice even mean in that context?
It's a tough question.
Yeah. And how do individuals, families navigate these life or death complexities when they're caught between worlds, often trying to manage things from thousands of miles away? It's definitely something to ponder.